Women in education. For me, it's one of the most naturally free-flowing phrases that I can think of. Women have been educating humans before they drew their first breath until they draw their last breath. They've been vital, intricate parts to the educational system, both professionally and personally. I think it's an appreciation episode that we're going to have today where we can see how much of an impact that they have had from the early days of education to modern day educational systems. Joining me today are 4 fantastic educational professionals that have a range of experiences and have done a range of jobs in the education field. So please take your time, sit back, relax, and enjoy, because what they're going to give you today is worth every second of listening. So let's go. And today on Voices, this episode excites me the most because I love education. I've been a teacher for a little while now, and I wanted to have a conversation focused on women in education. Not because of you, I don't understand women because I'm a man, but because the vitalness of who women are in education, the nurturing nature and absolute intelligence that women have is important to understand where they are coming from and how they focus and teach classes and manage an education. So today I have 4 wonderful ladies joining me, and no person can introduce themselves better than themselves. So I'll have Anna, Courtney, Jenna, and then Judy introduce themselves, and then we will begin the conversation. So thank you, ladies.
Hey guys, I'm Anna Czekaj. I'm from North Carolina. This is my 15th year teaching in Gaston County schools. I was also an instructional technology facilitator for 3 years and then went back to the classroom. I graduated from UNC Charlotte with my undergraduate in history and then got my teaching certification through the RAUC, which is the Regional Alternative Licensure Center, and then got my master's degree in instructional technology from Appalachian State University. I'm currently teaching 7th grade science, social studies, and world history.
Thank you, Anna. And Courtney?
Hi, everyone. My name is Courtney Armstrong. I'm in my 13th year in education. I also went to UNC Charlotte, and I started out as a French teacher. I taught that for about 6.5 years, and then I transitioned over to become an academic facilitator. I'm an academic facilitator at one of the local middle schools, and I'm currently attending Queen's University, and I'm serving as a principal intern.
Awesome. And Jenna?
Hey everybody, I'm Jenna Harbour. I am a teacher in North Carolina. It is my 2nd year teaching. I have taught 3rd grade both years, but I have been in different counties. I started in Pitt County, and now I'm working in Wake County. I graduated from East Carolina University, where I, of course, studied elementary education and concentrated in science, elementary science.
Thank you. And Judy?
Hey everybody, I think I'm the old lady of the room. My name is Judy Moore. I am currently in my 23rd year in education, I believe. I am a building level administrator. I've worked at pretty much all levels. I've been a high school principal, a high school assistant principal. I was a high school teacher. I've also been a principal of a middle school, an alternative school, and now I'm principal of a K-8 charter school just outside Tampa, Florida. I graduated with a degree like Anna in history from North Carolina State University. I got my master's in school administration from UNC Charlotte, and I got my doctorate in ed leadership from Northeastern University in Boston.
So as you can see, we have the full gamut, so we definitely can answer all the questions. Shout out to history majors. I'll just leave that there. So anyways, first question. So education is a constantly evolving field, and it's, in my opinion, it's been more reactive than proactive in the last 100 years or so. And what I've seen is there's been a primary shift from sort of men at the forefront to women as the primary educators. So I'll start again with Judy, then Jenna, Courtney, and then Anna. Why do you think that shift happened from men to women?
Well, see, and here's where you get into that whole history thing. So Nick, you and I have some common ground there, but I don't think you can answer this question without thinking about the Industrial Revolution. For me, I don't know that education became, I don't know that it became so much of a secondary thing as much as the men went to the STEM fields, or what we would call the STEM fields now, like 100 years ago when industrialization became a thing. And I think it's almost like they pulled the men into those, and it only left the women left over at the end. When I went to Mount Holly, one of the things where I first met some of you, I was in the vault because I'm a history major, and Mount Holly had been there since the 40s, and there used to be across the street from there the I think they called it like a hermitage. It was like the teacherage where the teachers actually lived, and it was a building right behind where Rankin Elementary School is. It's not even there anymore. But that's where the teachers lived. But I found like I think it was like a faculty handbook from like 1920 something that was in the vault. And it was all, women, teachers could not be seen without their male escort husband, could only be seen with a male if it was your husband or your father or your brother. It was really interesting. But for me, I really think the shift from men being the teachers to women being the teachers is more, in my opinion, because the men went out into industry and factories in what we would call STEM fields now, and it pretty much left the women at home to do the teaching of the kids. That's kind of where I think that started and sort of stayed that way.
That makes sense. Jenna?
Yeah, so definitely bouncing off kind of what Judy was saying. I feel like if you look at, the past 100 years, that's a very large time span, and, stuff has changed. Our roles in society have changed, specifically when you look at men and women. And so I definitely agree with Judy, how she is saying that men took those more industrious jobs and went on to kind of what they would see as bigger and better things. And, as women were able to finally start joining the workforce, women have the traditional role of mother and housekeeper and caregiver. And I just was speaking with some of my family about that. And, being a teacher, especially an elementary teacher, that's a job that really mirrors some of those traditional woman roles. And so I feel like that's a position that a woman, in the past 100 years would have just easily slipped into, where the man kind of took those more, boss kind of jobs, industrial jobs, better paying, more hands-on type stuff.
That makes total sense. And Courtney?
This was one of those that I really wanted to hear other people's opinions, so it's really good to hear those perspectives. But one thing that just really sticks out to me as of late is that there has been such an emphasis on social emotional learning. And I believe that just the natural instinct of a lot of women, I can't speak for everyone, but of a lot of women, that ability to nurture, to meet those needs of nurturing first, have definitely allowed or have maybe attracted a lot of women into the teaching field. So we're kind of those people who are going to meet you for who you are first and then grow you from there. And so I really think that since education has developed over time to really just hit into what it means to really support a person for who they are, that really has just allowed a lot of women to really just grow and prosper in the field.
I totally agree. And Anna?
Well, I think for the most part, everyone has answered kind of what I was going to say to begin with starting with the industrialization and when the men did go out to the field, and then the nature of a lot of women being a nurturer. We've got to remember too that sometimes women are more soft-spoken and well, not all women, but a lot of women are more soft spoken, and children tend to gravitate towards that more than to someone that can be a little bit more harsh. And I'm not saying that men are harsh, it's just that men have more, I don't know, sometimes.
We're not emotional. I'm just gonna put that out there. We're not.
Right. Yeah, it's not an emotional type thing. Women do have wear lots of emotions on their sleeves and things, and so children do tend to gravitate towards that more.
I agree. You know, the interesting thing about it, Judy kind of brought it up at the beginning, was, you know, I say 100 years. 100 years ago was 1920. And again, for all the history lovers, 1920 is when women got the right to vote. It was also like a very interesting time in the country because of sort of post-war and all those things. So I think it actually leads to the next question really well, because there's a hierarchy or sort of segregation between men and women, specifically on the infrastructural level. And I'm really glad that Judy is on this call specifically because she can speak to it as an administrator. And so what do you think, or when do you think there was a slight shift where people started to see women more as leaders in education, as opposed to what was once existing? So we'll go Courtney, Judy, Anna, and then Jenna. You all kind of alluded to it a little bit, is the fact that like society has generally been a male dominated society. And then when there was a shift around now, 100 years ago, it moved where the hierarchy has generally been where men were in control of schools and school systems and so forth. And now you see a shift where it wasn't that segregation, as Judy kind of alluded to, where women couldn't be out without the men. And now you don't see that. There's a shift where people are recognizing that's an issue, and they're acknowledging women can be leaders and should be leaders in education. So what do you think was sort of the reasoning behind that? And do you see the shift kind of moving forward? And again, so just for order, Courtney, Judy, Anna, and then Jenna.
You know, I don't know if exactly I can say, you know, when the shift happened, but I think one thing that I have realized is that a lot of people in general have just realized what kind of leadership capabilities they have. And for a lot of teachers, you know, if they were women, and again, I don't want to speak generally, but if they were women, maybe you thought that that was like the classroom was where your leadership abilities could, you know, really take root and grow. But I think with the onset of different leadership positions, like being facilitators, being coaches, you know, working with the district or what have you, that has opened up a lot more opportunities for anyone, but particularly women, to embrace their leadership beyond just a classroom setting, and not to say that the classroom setting is, you know, limiting. I mean, that's a wonderful setting to show your leadership. But because there are other ways to express your leadership, it has allowed more people to kind of step out of just the classroom and to impact more communities. So again, I'm not sure as to when exactly the shift happened, but I do know when in education, when people started thinking about, you know, what exactly is our need to best support our children. When that conversation or that challenge was brought to the table, it just allowed for more people to express themselves, express their given gifts in other ways beyond just the classroom.
Thank you so much. All right, and Judy?
Well, I have kind of a different take on this. I would agree with you that that shift has started to happen in recently. I'm going to say just in the lifetime of my career, in the 23 years I've been doing this, that shift has been more tangible just since that time. Because I mean, I can tell you as an administrator, and this is like year 14 for me as an administrator, like even you saw women principals more in the elementary levels a lot earlier. But even when I first started as a principal back in like 2006, I think is when I went to middle school. High school was still, like, for lacking a better term, was still the old boys club. And you'll see a lot of if you're going to find a lot of male principals, you're going to find them more in the high school, secondary levels than you're going to find them in the elementary levels for the most part. That is starting to change some. Like for example, when I was placed at in the system that we worked at, the high school that I was placed at, the second high school that I was a principal of, I was placed there in 2016. I was the first female principal that high school had ever had, ever. It's 2016. Wow. How am I the first woman principal ever at Bessemer City High School until that happened? And that was 2016. And I have kind of a thought for that because I've seen it over the course of the year, over the course of the years, that men in the classroom, if you look at teachers, at least over the lifetime of my career, men were always more upwardly mobile. And I think this kind of gets back to some more gender roles. You can't support a family on a teacher's salary. Like you just can't, like, especially if you're going to have a large family or whatever. That, and to me, I saw over the course of the year, I saw several really amazing guy teachers that I had that were awesome, that were great. And most of them moved into an administrative, upwardly mobile sort of path because the money, like the money was there. And I don't know that it was so much for their leadership. It was because they had a family to support, and you really can't support a family on a teacher's salary. Whereas women, if you want to talk strict gender roles, a lot of the times the women that, I mean, I've got people that have worked for me over the years that didn't need to work. Because the husband did whatever. So they were perfectly content to stay in the classroom and do that nurturing thing with the students and be that nurturer inside the four walls of their classroom. And they were great with it. And that was their comfort zone. And that's where they wanted to be. And they didn't really have any desire to move into a more of a leadership role. And on top of that, they didn't have a necessity for it either. I think over the course of the last, couple of decades, I've seen men that had more of a push for leadership because they had more of a push to be upwardly mobile, to increase their ability to support their family. I've seen that year in and year out with people. It's only really been in the last 10, 15 years that you're starting to see that shift, where I looked around a high school principal meeting toward the end of my time working for that district, and we were about half and half at that point. When I was first placed as a principal, I was one of only two sitting in the room, one of only two women sitting in the room of male high school principals, and that is shifting now. But for me, I really think in some sense that men had more of an impetus to move up of their own, more so than some of the women did. So that's kind of where I take that.
Okay, cool. And yeah, like Monday was the first time I heard the phrase pink collar job, in which some people classify teaching as. And Anna?
Well, I've noticed too that in my years of teaching, we were talking about the people that we had taught for, our principals that we have taught for. I've never taught for a male principal. All my principals have been females, but I've had male assistant principals. But I feel like now women are more comfortable knowing that they can go into those positions and be successful, that people will support them, and that they can show, and they will show that they're just as good at their administrative level jobs or county level jobs as men are. And then being out of the classroom in a county level position that I was in for 3 years, as a technology facilitator, there were 7 or 8 of us. I can't remember exactly how many, but of that number, we had 3 males in the group. So, it's women are, starting to really understand, hey, I can do this and I'm going to do this now.
Great answer. And Jenna?
Women are seen as the nurturers, stay at home, take care of the children, take care of the house. So when I think of those leadership positions and, the gender roles that accompany them, I can't remember who exactly was saying it, but that comfortability for women to now kind of step up into that leadership position and realize that it is a place for a woman to be, and it doesn't have to just be a male-dominated field. But I also see kind of the pressure for women to stay in a classroom because I feel like And even in just my 2 years of teaching, it is a very, like you said, pink collar job. A lot of women are classroom teachers, and I feel like there is a lot of pressure on women to stay where we are at in the classroom because it's what we're good at. It's what's comfortable to us. It's what's natural to us. So I'm kind of on both sides of it, you know, where my mind is being pulled. I think that women finally are being more comfortable stepping up to that leadership position and putting their feet out there and doing the big job of managing.
So, I think this is an important question. Do you remember your first year of teaching, and what did you do to help you make it to the second? And what were some of the challenges in your first that you remember that you wanted to overcome to go into the second? So we'll have Jenna, Anna, Judy, and Courtney answer in that order.
Yeah, so like I said at the beginning during my introduction, I am only a second year teacher, so I'm very fresh to the teaching scene. My first year was just last year, and it was in Pitt County. I'm going to preface my answer by saying a few things. I was working in Pitt County. I was working at a Restart Title I school where more than 75% of students were free or reduced lunch. Very, very low household incomes and just a lot of stuff that children were dealing with at home. So my first year of teaching was a struggle. We think about schools like that. A Title I, a Restart school basically means the school was failing and had to be taken over by the state and had to meet criteria A, B, C, and D and be checked over by the county many, many times a week. And teachers were being looked over so much, and just the stress on working at a Title I Restart school is high, even for, in my opinion, a 20-year teacher. So being a first-year teacher, still trying to learn the ways of teaching, and working in that environment was tough. Now, I say that because it did kind of alter my feelings about teaching a little bit my first year. I did know what I was getting into because I was a long-term sub at that school before I took on a full-time position there. I knew the personalities of those children. I knew the needs of those children. I knew the pressure coming at me from the county. I had behavior issues galore, you know, people bringing drugs and weapons, fights, so much different stuff. To help me get through a year like that, I really had to hold on to my colleagues at the school and my friends and my mentor and my support. I'm not sure about you guys, but my first year of teaching, of course, is very fresh on my brain. You don't know what you're doing. You really don't know what you're doing. You go to college and you learn the foundations of teaching. You don't learn how to be a teacher. And I always say that. So learning how to be a teacher with all of that adversity right at my neck was really difficult. And having the support of my colleagues that had been working at that school for years and just hearing that they understood. I mean, I would go home and cry almost every day. From either not feeling accomplished, teaching them academically, or something a student had said to me, or thinking about a student's home life. It was really difficult. So holding on to my colleagues and understanding that they were going through the same stuff was really helpful to me. And now, like I said, I work in Wake County, which is one of the largest in North Carolina. I work at a school that's situated between $2 million neighborhoods, and it's just such a different environment. But kind of thinking about the struggles my first year, I think a lot of the struggles that came from my first year of teaching had to do with the fact that it was a restart Title I school. Like I said, the county had to. I understood it. County has to check over everything you did. I submitted my lesson plans every single week. Superintendent and everything was in my classroom at least once a week, looking at, you know, stuff that to them mattered, to education matters, to state matters, such as my word walls, my anchor charts, my this, my that. But the biggest thing that was a struggle to me that I didn't understand, that I don't understand now why it was a struggle, is trying to comply with all of those checklists that the county was pushing on us. Because being in a classroom with those type of students, I learned very quickly their needs are not a word wall on the back of my room. Their needs are not an anchor chart with multiplication and division strategies on it. their basic needs are stuff that isn't being met at home, being nurtured, being loved, being fed, being cared for, being supported. And so it was really a struggle for me to comply with everything the county was asking me to do, and also give those students the first thing that they needed. I'm a firm believer that if students don't have that foundation, that love, that support, that caring, the last thing on their mind is learning. They're hungry, they're tired, they're going through so much at home. And it was just a struggle for me to keep up with what the county was expecting from us as educators in a Title I restart school, but also meeting the needs of all of my children and not being completely overwhelmed. And now working in Wake County, they are it's very straightforward what they expect. Our lessons our math lessons are done for us in the curriculum. We follow an ELA program that's very mapped out. It's very relaxed. They know that these students are in a system, are in an environment where most of them are supported, and their parents do understand the importance of education, and it's supported at home. And so I don't understand how I do understand, but it's crazy to me how my first year was such a struggle to meet the needs and the requirements of the county, where this year it's like a breeze for me. I'm like, this is great. So that's kind of my first year of teaching. It was definitely a struggle, a big learning curve for me. And at times I really thought, what am I doing? Why did I decide to do this? But then, looking back at it now that I'm not in the middle of that stress, it really built me up as a person and as an educator for my first year to be in a school that was so underprivileged.
Okay. And Anna, because I know Anna has a sort of different story as well too. So Anna, how your first year?
Well, I would have to say my first year, I actually loved my first year of teaching. My first full year of teaching, I worked for Judy. And then Lori Collins was my teammate, and Lynn Myers. And Lori taught me a lot. She was always giving me ideas anytime I would be able to go to her and I say, hey, Lori, what about this? Or this happened. How can I make it better? She was such an inspiration to me in my first year of teaching. And it did kind of help too that my mother was an educator, and she's actually retiring this year. So I was able to, I had a lot of people around me that I could trust to say, this totally bombed. What can I do? Why do you think it bombed? And why did this go well, but this lesson didn't? There were times when I was afraid of things that went on. But I would have to say for the most part, my first year and even the first couple of years were my favorites of teaching. My students at the time, which Jenna was one of them, they were all so respectful of us. They wanted to do good, do the right things. Even their parents were always checking in and, what can I do to help, or do you need anything? And it's just kind of shifted over the last couple of years to something totally different. But for me, my first year was one of my favorites and my best years.
Well, congratulations to your mom. I love your mom. She was awesome. And then shout out to Lori Collins. I really got to get her on one of these. Judy, your turn.
Well, I'm right there with Jenna. If you want to, how I got through my first year of teaching, it might have involved copious amounts of alcohol. I'm not sure, but they, the funny thing is that her situation and mine were a lot alike. I was in Wake County. I graduated from NC State University, and but I graduated early, so I graduated in December. So there weren't a whole lot of teaching jobs, so I started out as a substitute. And long story short, I was in a high school, Title I high school, which I think has now been torn down and rebuilt, but I think it's a magnet school now. So had about 2,100 students in it at the time, a staff of about 150. I started there as a sub, just like working around Wake County to do sub jobs because I couldn't find a permanent one in the middle of the year. And then that sub job turned into a permanent job. Now that I'm on the other side of the desk, I know exactly what it was that happened after North Carolina populates their teaching rosters by what they call ADM, or average daily membership. So basically, however many kids you have in your building is going to determine how many teaching allotments the state gives you. And the state of North Carolina is a little different than a lot of the other states around the country in that as a principal, it's nice because I don't have to worry about how expensive a teacher is. I can hire a 30-year teacher or I can hire a first-year teacher. It doesn't matter. I can hire one teacher. It doesn't matter what they cost. The state's going to give me an allotment for a teacher. And not all states work that way. That's one thing that's really good about being an administrator in North Carolina. And the bottom line is, I was the 5th teacher that these kids had all year long. It's high school classes. And what it was is they were given an allotment after their 20th day, which is when North Carolina decides ADM. So they had more kids than they thought they were going to have. The state gave them another allotment, and they decided as an administrative team to put that allotment in the social studies department to lower their class sizes. But the way they went around building those classes, I could see all this clearly now because I'm on this side of the desk, was basically to go through everybody's class and ask them who they wanted to get rid of. So my first classes were nothing but the cast-offs that all the behavior issues from every other class all put in one place together.
Wow.
I was yeah, right. I was the 5th teacher they had all year long because they ran off the first 4. This was February. Well, nobody's going to run me off because that's just not going to happen. So I told them I would take the job, but I'd been their substitute for 2-3 weeks. And then all of a sudden I walk in on a Monday and now I'm their teacher. So I have no legitimacy to begin with because they've only seen me as a sub for the last 2 or 3 weeks. I'm 21, just turned 22 years old. Some of these kids are 19. And so literally I'm only about 18, 20 months older than some of the students that I'm teaching at this point. So it wasn't a good setup to begin with. High poverty school, lots of needs, all that same kind of stuff. So I pretty much went home and cried every night because it was survival. There was not a lot of instruction that went on, especially since, I went the traditional route. I had done student teaching. I'd done student teaching in Wake County. I had an amazing, fantastic cooperating teacher, Mike Ludwig, who he was awesome. And I learned a lot from him. But what I didn't learn from him was classroom management because he didn't have any. He didn't have to. His kids respected and loved him, and all he had to do was look at him sideways, and they weren't going to mess up with me either. So I walked into that particular place knowing all kinds of things about how to build a great lesson and not a whole lot about how to manage a classroom. And interestingly enough, as I've gone through my career, one of the last schools that I worked at the last school I worked at in North Carolina before I came down to Florida was an alternative school. We're talking about an F school, you're talking about a restart school. This is an F school with, serious issues in terms of student behavior, mental health issues, all the rest of that. And the only thing I really had in that building were first-year teachers. One of the things that is, I think, an issue with education is that, if you've got this really super difficult, and you're a cardiologist and you've got this really super difficult, complicated heart surgery that's really hard to do, the doctor you're going to get to do that heart surgery is going to be the guy who's got the most experience and is the best guy out there. Whoever best guy, girl, whatever cardiologist has got the most experience and the most learning and is the best person for that surgery is who's going to get it. It's completely flipped on its head in education. And the ones who get the hardest classes are the brand new teachers that don't have a clue what they're doing, because Jenna's not wrong. They teach you all the theory about how to teach in college, but you don't have the nuts and bolts to actually know how to do the job when you come out. It's really it's on the job training. But the new teachers get the toughest assignments. And I've seen that year after year after year. And I think the only way you do get through that is with a supportive family of teachers around you that A, recognize it, and B, are helpful and are there to help you, because your colleagues can either be the one to get you through, like Lori Collins, amazing math teacher. I've said that from the beginning. That was a great team, Anna, that you talked about. The 3 of you together were an awesome team. But that team's either going to get you through, or you're going to have that one teacher. We all know who they are. They have different names. Call them whoever they want, but you all know who they are. Who's that same one that's gonna tear you down or talk about you or act like a 7th grade, boy or girl or whatever, and be the one to run you out of the profession. It really is the support of the people that you work with that's either going to make or break you in that situation.
Very true. I totally get it. I got to work with that team, so they were great for my first year. And Courtney.
All right. So my first year of teaching was probably one of the most challenging years of my life. I will not lie. I recall actually losing 10 to 15 pounds that year because I wrote so many office referrals and did them during lunch. So I never ate lunch. So it was a really tough year of my life. I struggled a lot with classroom management, and like what was shared previously, I could build a pretty decent lesson. It was how I, interacted with my students. And I learned, I would say that over time, what made teaching stick, what made me come back was number one, well, it's not really number one. I was a teaching fellow, so I had to be in the classroom for 4 years. Otherwise, I had to pay back a scholarship. But in all honesty, what made me come back is because I really hitched on to an amazing mentor. And I cannot, I feel like everybody else, like having that PLC or just an amazing mentor who just really can show you the ropes and show you, like you said, Judy, the nuts and bolts of teaching. That instructional management piece really was the game changer. I noticed that in my first year of teaching, I struggled with I would say a social intelligence, in the sense of I really didn't know how to read students as well as I needed to. But the thing is, I learned how to do that over time. And I had a mentor who really helped show me that. So I would say that first year, I wish that I would have did a better job of building really sturdy, sustainable relationships with students, instead of being like this middle class girl who comes into a situation which was high poverty and just expecting everybody to just respect me. I needed to do a better job of meeting the humans' needs, meeting our students' needs before doing anything else. So that was my biggest struggle. But I am very glad to say that I've learned a lot, and you just get better.
Courtney, the interesting thing is I remember your first year because I came to visit you because we student taught in the same place. I remember that. I came to visit your classroom. I remember because we had different teacher work days and stuff.
Right.
And Judy allowed us to do work from home on certain teacher work days because she trusted us as teachers. It's just amazing, right? The good things. Okay, so, and those are really, really great answers, specifically dealing with the first year of teaching. And so I want to move to something that's connected to first year of teaching and continuing, is respect in the classroom. Management is one of the most significant issues that teachers encounter in the K through 12 arena. It's the thing that I think makes or breaks a teacher. And so my thing is, what's your take on classroom management today? How has it changed over time? And do you think men have it easier to manage classrooms? So I'll have you go Courtney, Judy, Anna, and then Jenna.
Okay, so I would say that from what I know in regards to classroom management, there has been quite a shift. And I see the shift moving from, I remember when I was younger and just looking at all of my teachers, teaching, like, whatever the teacher said, you did. There was no question asked. It was what it was. And that was what was expected. And I think someone shared earlier, it was like, if I were to get in trouble at school, my mom might ask me, so what did you do? It was never really asking or questioning the teacher of their professional practice. And there has been a shift along the way. And I have just noticed that now the shift, I would say, is very relationship heavy, in the sense of the respect in the classroom most definitely comes from how much you learn about your students. And how much you show that you care through instruction. I would say in regards to, I I think we were talking a little bit about, do men get more respect in a classroom just simply because they're a man? I would say not really. I've seen some some instructional tragedies, if you will, when it comes to both women and men. And, and it's honestly because I feel like kids want to know that they are being led by somebody who is, who is caring, who is very nurturing. So they have, again, that social intelligence, that social competence. But they're also wanting, and somebody who has their best interest at heart. Also need somebody who is going to, lay down the law. And to that end, I feel like that is something that everybody in this day and age must come prepared into any classroom with. Otherwise, it is not going to be pretty. No matter if you are the burliest of a man or the softest of a woman, it doesn't matter. You must come in with this skill set in order to make sure that your classroom thrives.
All right. And Judy?
I've said for years, if I could figure out how to get people to teach kids and not teach subjects, I would retire and buy a small chain of islands in the Caribbean somewhere. And that really ends up being more of a secondary thing, because honestly, over the years, having worked K-12 now in administration, teachers sort of reflect their students in some sense. So the high school teachers especially I always ask that in an interview. And so to anybody listening, when somebody asks you, why do you want to be a teacher? If what comes out of your mouth next is, oh my gosh, I just love biology, I'm already done. Like that wasn't the answer I wanted. I want the answers that you love kids. Like if you come out with, I love biology, I love math, I just love physics, wrong, wrong, and wrong. Like that's not, go teach in a college. Like that's not where you need to be. Because like relationships are everything. So and they've been everything. And the funny thing is I got this from my first year as a principal all the way back at Mount Holly with you, Lou, and Anna, with one of the teachers that was there. And I've said this for years ever since, where I said, you know what, here's the key to classroom management. And it's this one sentence, and this is it. I plant it in the ground and watch it grow. Students will do anything that you want them to do, anything. It doesn't matter who the kid is, where they're coming from, doesn't matter. They will do anything, and more to the point, their parents will do anything for you, provided there is one thing in place, and that is they think you like them, period. Because there was a teacher at Mount Holly, I'm pretty sure didn't like half of her kids, but they all thought she did. And she was amazing at it. Like she was one of my favorite teachers of all time, because she would come into my office and she would complain about kids that were driving her crazy or whatever, but those kids worshiped her. They loved her, and the whole thing was they all thought she loved them, and that was it. And because I saw a kid all but throw himself on a table in between his mom and the teacher to defend the teacher in front of the mom, because the bottom line was that he thought that teacher just loved him more than anything. And that's the key. So you have to be able to build those relationships. And if you can build those relationships authentically, so because kids are pretty smart, like they're going to see through whether or not you're just putting on an act. Like if they honestly believe that you care about them as a human being, I don't care what kind of kid it is. And the only schools until now that I've ever worked in have been high risk, high or low SES Title I type schools with kids with all of those background stories. And you can take the worst group of kids that I've ever had in terms of what their home life is like and what their situation is like and what they're walking into when they go home. And it holds true for them too. They want to know somebody cares and loves them. And if you're that person and you figured out how to do that, they will do anything for you. It doesn't matter who they are. Like that's the key to classroom management.
All right, and Anna?
I think this is probably my favorite question of all of them, because I am a firm believer that you have to build relationships before the learning will come. And I've actually been in a situation the last couple of years where we've had several students that are on other teams, and for some reason they gravitated towards me, which is perfectly fine. But they did not, they felt like I liked them, which I genuinely did. They were not on my team, so they were not a behavior problem for me. They were for the other teachers, but it came to the point where those other teachers were starting to send them to my classroom. And I always had an extra area in my classroom where they would come and they would sit. They would even bring their work, their Chromebooks, their work, and they would sit there and they would be perfectly fine. They would see me in the hall or see me out in public and say, hey, Miss Czekaj, hey, and things like that. But I really feel like students need to know that you genuinely care about them. And then once they understand that and they know that you do care about them, that their grades will start coming up. I've had a good example this year with a student. We switched her classes. She was in my third block class, and then we switched her to a different class. The atmosphere was totally different. I was personally able to be different in that class because of behavior and things. And her grade went from failing to she's actually just passed with a 94. So you have to build those relationships and let them know that you are there for them and that you're going to care, that you do care about them and you're going to care for them.
I think it's amazing. I just want to interject really quick before I let you go, Jenna, is that Anna and I have several projects we did with kids that we may or may not have particularly cared for on the highest level. And those kids I know specifically loved Anna. Like I can think of Haley and just different kids, and it's because of just you were who you were. So I'm giving you kudos as a short interjection.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And Jenna, your turn. You probably have a different story specifically because you deal with smaller children.
Yeah, so everyone's really said a lot of what I was thinking. You guys have had such good answers. But I really think kind of the shift in management behavior and respect in the classroom has kind of come from a shift in family dynamic and how people view teaching. So I like to think back, many, many years ago when my grandmother was in school. You acted up at school, you got a paddle, you go home, no questions asked, you get another paddle. And nowadays we have to tread so lightly with our behavior management and our discipline. And, and I don't disagree with this at all, but we look so much to positive reinforcement rather than what used to happen years ago is, you got very negative consequences. I think that's kind of where the switch has occurred. And, it used to be so many people would just listen to what the teacher said and take it for was. They would never question a teacher, and I feel like that's become such a commonplace is to question the teacher and say, I feel like parents make a lot of excuses for things that are going on, and so I feel like a lot of children feel like they can get away with a lot more, and it just makes it really tough in the classroom. In regards to having the respect from the children, exactly what they are saying, you have to meet the child where they're at. Not every child is going to come into school happy. Not every child has a picture perfect life. Not every child, I even have third graders that deal with stuff that in my 23, almost 24 years of life, I've never dealt with. And a lot of the times that's where those behavior issues stem from. They want that attention. They crave that attention that they're not getting. When I worked at that Title I school last year, so many of those children, like I said, had so many behavior problems. And like Anna was saying, there are so many kids at that school that would gravitate towards me that weren't even mine, had huge behavior problems just because I would be the ear to listen. I would be the shoulder to cry on. Their teacher was done with them at that point. But I would listen to what they had to say. What's going on? Not just why are you doing that, but what's going on? You've got to meet the child where they are, not academically. I'm talking socially. I'm talking emotionally. You get that respect. You show them that you love and care about them. Then they will in turn respect you. And you got to meet the child where they are at socially and emotionally to advance them academically. Kind of speaking on men versus women in respect, I feel like thinking about typical personality traits of a man and a woman. You know, men usually are seen to put their foot down more, be more stern, be more strict, not put up with a lot of BS, whereas women are more nurturing and caring and forgiving and kind. So I think it is what you make it. You know, as a female teacher, you have to take on those personality traits of being stern. But I think that children, when they first meet a teacher, might think that they can get away with more from a woman simply because women, their personality traits are what they generally and usually are. And men, they probably don't think they can get away with as much because men are more stern, put their foot down, and don't put up with as much. But as educators, we all know that is not the truth. Man or woman, you've got to have those really strong personality traits. So I think that children might think that they're going to respect a man more, and kind of fool around and mess around more in a woman's classroom. But as teachers, I think we all know that that is not the case.
I think it's awesome, and another opportunity to interject. Lori Collins, I just love Lori so much. She was super stern, and the thing that I found so amazing was so many kids who left Lori Collins years later would come back and be like, "Man, why you don't teach math like Miss Collins?" They would say it in that exact way, and they forgot that she was a really stern lady because they remember what she taught, which meant that she had to control and create a culture. And just being abroad, I do want to interject something if you all want to answer this one just in sort of whatever way you want. One of the biggest issues I've run into, and I taught in the school abroad, is culture is huge. Like if you don't understand the culture of the community of the school, it doesn't matter what kind of practices you have. If those practices don't go with cultural norms, I think that causes an issue. Specifically because, like Courtney would know, Courtney and I worked in a program through the Children's Defense Fund called Freedom School, where we were really with at-risk kids. And like Courtney was at one site and I was at a different site in our second year, and I was a site coordinator, and just sort of seeing it from different levels. Understanding the culture of where these kids come from means absolutely everything. So did anyone want to like respond to that? It doesn't have to be in a specific order, but I just wanted to throw a quick injection there.
Sure, I can jump in very quickly. So yes, we did Freedom Schools several years ago. So we worked with the school to come up with ways to really bridge the gap between, again, home and school relations. Started kind of helping the teachers to teach parents how they can be a partner in education from the home front, and what kind of effect that would have on the student both at home and in the classroom. So I really agree about that cultural piece. We wanted to just be like, let's do that. And they're like, no, we can't, because we don't have the parent partnerships that we want to have. So we had to scale back a little bit and hit it from exactly what their need point was. And then from there, we saw a lot of growth.
And I think you have to consider culture is also, it's a more consuming term than that. Like I haven't worked outside of the country, but for me, culture can also mean the culture of poverty, and can mean the cultures just across the U.S. in terms of how people are raised. And one of the things that you said, whether guys have it easier or girls have it easier, for me, I haven't noticed that men or women have classroom management any easier, but I have noticed that in individual cases as it relates to students and their backgrounds, that sometimes I've had to strategically schedule students that they've had nothing but male teachers, because whatever it is that's gone on in their home life, they have no respect for women in authority, even their own mothers. Like I've seen that in my office with mothers and kids. I've seen the flip side of that, where they will not respond to male teachers, and I've had to strategically schedule them so they didn't have a male teacher because of whatever it was that was going on in their home. So there's different cultures in terms of even what's coming from family cultures that again, I think that those relationship pieces, you're never going to get to what the real root causes are if you don't have that relationship with student to be able to put together, oh wait, X, Y, and Z happened at home, so he's probably not going to respond very well to a female teacher. Maybe we need to do this instead.
Yeah, and I agree with what you guys are saying. Like I said, the first year was in that Title I, very, very high poverty, very low, if any, parent involvement. And I am now working in a school situated between $2 million neighborhoods. Parents are very, very, very involved. There are pros and cons to both. The culture of the community of the students is night and day. I will say that. I've had to relearn some things. I've had to relearn my management and how I go about that, and my communication with parents, and just the way that I do things. Coming from that low income, very low parent involvement now to very, very high wealthy income families and parent involvement to the max. I've had to really, really relearn stuff, and it's been an interesting adjustment for me. I'm not saying I like either over the other. Like I said, they both have pros and cons, but very, very, very different culture. And you do things very differently and go about teaching the children and learning about the children very differently in those two different environments. I've seen the depths of it and I've seen the heights of it.
So moving on to the next question is dealing with sort of respect and advancement. So my question specifically is that teachers in general, if you look at the news, it says teachers are underpaid, and there's definitely moves and all that stuff out there about how teachers are not paid enough, and how people are now teaching their kids at home and they're like, oh, I appreciate the teacher. But then people don't necessarily understand how to pay them because you don't know how to monetize a thing that doesn't create a profit. But in the same breath, when I talked with the gentleman, they said, well, because teachers, and in my opinion, teaching is kind of terminal, the only true way to get advancement is by changing and moving out of the classroom, which obviously some people know on a first-hand basis. So my question would be is, in terms of respect, do you think teachers are paid correctly, or could they be paid more? And then what would be the reasoning why? And also, as far as advancement, is there really an ability to be advanced as a teacher? And so the order I'll go in is Anna, Courtney, Jenna, and then Judy.
Well, my honest opinion is no, we are not paid on what we do. But as a lot of us know, most we don't go into this job to be paid for the money. You know, um, when I several years ago I was in Australia for the summer for 3 weeks, and we had the opportunity to go into a school, and the teachers there were talking to us, and they were telling us, about how they're paid and stuff like that. And they ended up telling us that they're paid 3 times more than we are. And I'm thinking, why does our society not respect us as teachers, no matter man or woman? Why do they not respect us like that? So it's been kind of um, like a not battle, but a conversation between what is the right pay and why. We've had days here in North Carolina that the NCAE marched for, higher pay and things like that. I do think we should be paid more, but I think we should be respected more as well. So, I don't know, that's kind of a sticky conversation question. I don't want to get into a whole lot, but as a whole, I do feel like we should be paid more, because there's a lot that we deal with that comes with the territory of what we do, but it should not be put on us as teachers to do those things. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense, because the thing about it is it's very political, and Judy probably will have a really, really good take on it, even though she's going to go last, but she probably has a really good take on it, sort of seeing it from the administrative side. And what about advancement? Because I know you were a facilitator. I know Courtney was a facilitator. So what about advancement? Do you see that? Because what I see is advancements, you have to exit the classroom to actually advance. So I'll let you answer that, and then I'll have Courtney follow.
Well, yeah, I do agree with that, because when I did leave the classroom, I left for 3 years. I was an instructional technology facilitator, and then I had my little girl, and I wanted to go back into the classroom, but it is very political. You know, I was paid more. I did more work. But I think that teachers, we should not have to worry about, oh, I'm only going to get a raise if I go into a county level position or administrative position. You know, I'm good at what I do. I know I'm good at what I do. So I should be, I should be paid for that. I should be paid for what I do. Um, so unfortunately, it does take advancement in our profession to be able to get a raise.
Okay, and Courtney?
Um, Yeah, honestly, how do you put a price or a value on people raising? Like that, like, geez Louise, I mean, our profession, we are molding society. How our society acts, how we respond to things, meaning like, our critical thinking process, how we decide on things, like we are the people that make that happen. I don't really know if I don't really know if there's a dollar amount that can be put on that, to be honest with you. I do find it funny. I've seen several times on Facebook where somebody was like, you want to pay teachers the amount that they're worth? Like, let you pay, for example, on teachers, babysitters by any stretch of the imagination. A babysitter might be this hour. Then, multiply it by this many hours and all these different things, and aim to be like $300,000 year for that teacher. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds about right. But I would just say, like, in my head, like, yes, definitely teachers deserve so much more because we work hard to make sure that we are creating a society that can function well. To the end about advancement and, having to leave the classroom in order to see some kind of raise, I will say this. I have been very proud. I work for Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools, and I am very proud of some ways that our district has thought about how to repurpose funds to compensate teachers. So we work with opportunity culture, and it's essentially an organization that works with district leaders and building level principals to see within your staff who are your teacher leaders, and how can we use positions and allocate positions that are given to you, so that you can maybe create a teacher leader that is, Judy talked about ADMs, be 1.5. So essentially that person could, essentially their pay is, teacher salary, but then they are also, because it's taking maybe a half of another position, they are getting $20,000 extra. And that position does not take you out of the classroom. You work with other teachers as like a PLC lead, but you are also teaching your own class. So I like how they have rethought that so that people still can do what they love and still serve children, but also really impact adults and therefore have a greater impact on the amount of students that are just getting good instruction. So I've been appreciative for that.
I appreciate that. The sermon and the collection plate is coming. Okay, so Jenna, your turn.
Yeah, so kind of like Anna was saying, this is a sticky subject, for everyone, but I definitely do think teachers should be paid more, but I think that in hand comes with respect. I think a lot of people who make the decisions about what teachers are paid have never been in a classroom, have never had 18 to 30 children in front of them with all different types of needs. They don't know the hours that we put in behind the scenes. My pay hours are 8:45 a.m. to 4:15 p.m. and no joke, every single day I am in the building much earlier than 8:45 and much later than 4:15. I work on the weekends and I'm not getting paid for any of that now. I don't mind doing it because I'm passionate about what I do, but sometimes I sit there and think, what other job? I mean, my mom's a nurse. She goes to work, she does her job, she comes home, it's done. She doesn't have to come home and do paperwork and think about her patients and do this and do that. Teachers do. and kind of thinking about that respect and why. You know, you were talking about, Lou, how there's no physical um, products being made. I was thinking about that as well. These high-paying jobs, doctors. You know, people think, "Oh gosh, what would we do without a doctor?" Well, you'll die probably. You know, but so many people don't think about what in the world would you do without teachers. Okay, well, here's the thing: without teachers, you don't have doctors. Without teachers, you don't have engineers, because they can't read, they can't write, they can't do math. It's such an important job, and people don't realize the products that we are producing because it's not tangible. You know, and not only are we producing uh, people that can be academically advanced in society, but we are producing good citizens. You know, we are with our students. I almost call them children because that's what they are to me. We are with our students more waking hours than their parents are. I am a firm believer that we teach them just as much, if not more, about being good humans than their parents do. We have such an influence, and it's not just a pay thing, it's a respect thing. So many people don't really open their eyes and think about what we do, how hard we work, how much we work, the things that are thrown at us. We're being pulled in 18 different directions all day, every day. We have meetings, we have children with different needs, we have to meet criteria of the county. It's a job. But like Anna said, every educator knows you don't go into education for the money. And that's what I think about that. I just bet the people who are making decisions about teacher pay would go be a teacher for a year, and I think maybe they would change their mind.
All right, and Judy?
Well, I don't think you can separate the respect part from the pay part. And I think that's a cultural issue, really. Like and you can look at that when we're talking about culture in the last question, but you look at different cultures in different countries, and the pay is consistent with how the culture of that country or that group sees their educators. And the bottom line here is, for whatever reason, which may get back to the very first question that you asked about, 100 years ago, the shift from men being teachers to women being teachers, it may be grounded in that, it may not, but the bottom line is that education is just not, for whatever reason, respected on the whole, like other professions, like doctors, lawyers, engineers, like whatever they happen to be. And I think that's why those kind of go hand in hand. We probably all had the same experience in college. At least I did, because I was going through college as an education major. And that's one of the 3 questions they always ask you: hey, where are you from? Like, what's your major? Or whatever. When you say your major, and I would say, oh, I'm history education. And the first question I always got was, why? Like, why do you want to do that? Like, you can do so much else. Like, and until that changes, I don't know that any of the rest of it's going to change, because I also don't think people really understand what it is that a teacher is required and or asked to do, especially when every new thing that comes out from whichever legislature in the 50 states wants to send it out, the number of things that we're expected to teach outside of the standard course of study, it grows exponentially every day. And we were having this conversation a little earlier, we were laughing about it, and we're recording this podcast in the middle of the COVID issue. So we're all sitting at home. I can add running of virtuals to my resume at this point, because that's what I'm doing. But one of the things that we were laughing about is the number of memes that are just like flooded for parents who are like, on that, like, and maybe they do. I don't know. Maybe they understand, or maybe they're getting a glimpse from this side of it, is that teachers to do, or what they do all day long. Because I think definitely, some of our parents are getting worn out having to be teachers at home, and I don't know if that will stick. I think some things that come out of this whole isolation thing that stick and maybe change us as a culture a bit going forward. I don't know if that'll be one of them or not, but I hope that people seeing from the trenches what it is that teachers are doing now sticks in a way that maybe some of that respect changes moving forward. And that's a hope.
All right, so you all have, I could have a million more questions, because you all have answered with such breadth that it's amazing. And so I've titled and I've named the podcast Voices, because I want to highlight the voices of people I know that do very, very amazing things. And I think you all are not only doing amazing things, but you're amazing people. I thank you for being a part of the show. And so what I like to do as the final word is leave the final word to the guests and the contributors, because you are indeed contributors. And because of that, you can talk about anything you want to talk about. It can be about what we've been talking about for this episode, or about anything that's on your heart. But with that, I will say, and I'll give you the order. Thank you so much for participating, ladies. You are the reason why there's continued hope in the future of education. And so we will go in the order of Judy, Jenna, Courtney, and Anna. But again, ladies, thank you. And I look forward to hearing what you have to say next.
Well, thanks, Lou, for having me. I really appreciate it. And it was so good to catch up with everyone else. To everyone, I'm just going to say, take a minute and pause when you're thinking about your teachers and your children's teachers at school. And we spend a lot of time even on like TripAdvisor or something like that. Like we're real quick to throw out a negative review on Google and keep the good things to ourselves and not really talk about those at parties. If you have a great teacher and your student has a great teacher, tell them. Don't just hold back and talk about people and talk about things when you're upset or when you have a concern or whatever. There are so many teachers doing so many amazing things that just never hear it because people don't think to say, you know what, I should probably tell them that they're awesome and my kid loves them and I'm so glad they were my kid's teacher. So I hope everybody listening takes 1 minute to figure out something great to say just to prop up the teacher that's teaching their kid.
Awesome. And Jenna?
Yeah, Lou, thanks for having me. It's been really good to catch up with people that I haven't spoke with in forever. But I guess just the last thing I'm going to say, since I'm such a new educator and, as Judy was saying, I switched my major from nursing to education. And the question I always got was why, even from some past educators that I had, some past teachers had texted me and say, why are you doing that? Don't do that. It's not worth it. If you want to become an educator, if you're passionate about children, if you're passionate about making a difference, do it. It's a tough job. It can be a sad job. It can be a job that makes you mad, frustrated. It can be a job that you might want to quit every single week. But with all those negative things, negative sides of being an educator are so many more positive things. It really takes a special person to be a teacher. And if you are thinking about being an educator, if you are an education major, if you are in your first years of education, stick to it, stay strong, think about the positives, like Judy was saying. The negatives are there. They do present themselves. It's unfortunate, but it's the truth. Stick to it, stay strong, and always do your best. Always put on that bright face because there are so many children that need us educators.
Thank you very much. Courtney?
Just to say what others have said, so glad to be a part of this. So thank you for making this happen, sir. But I would just say this is probably one of the most amazing professions ever. And I truly believe that just because we have the opportunity to impact the life of somebody else. And it's not just someone else's life. We get to impact communities of people. Sometimes we wonder, how can I make an impact on the world? It's just like that. You impact a student, which means you impact their family, and then that family knows other families. So if there's ever any doubt about whether or not you should go into education, we've all made it very plain and clear that yes, it is a hard job, but at the same time, it's a job that is full of benefits, and you reap a lot more than what you give out to students because you grow as an individual. So no matter where you are in your educational journey, hang on and keep the faith because you are making a difference in this society.
Thank you so much. And Anna?
I'd first like to say thank you for asking me to participate. It was a pleasure to kind of talk with you guys and to hear from Judy, which I worked for, and you, Lewis, which I worked with, and then Jenna was one of my students. But if I can tell anyone that is thinking about education, that it's in education, to also just stick with it and think about down the road, the rewards that you're going to get. There's nothing better than walking through the parking lot of a shopping center and hearing former students yell out of their car windows at you and asking you how you're doing and how your family is doing. So it is a rewarding profession. It does warm your heart when you truly think about what you're doing for our society.